the language families of Asia. So this is going to be the next in a video that I'm doing, which is basically going over the continents and just talking about the language family that all the languages stem from, so you can kind of get an understanding of how they relate to each other and which languages are similar, what they have in common, that kind of thing. So getting straight into it, of the 4.561 billion people in Asia, 1.5 billion speak a Sino-Tibetan language as a primary language. So that is the largest language family in Asia. This is very different to Europe, because in Europe, for example, there's about, I think, 750-ish million people, and almost all of them speak languages from one language family, whereas as you can see in Asia, that's only about a third of them speaking from one major language family, even though it's the biggest component. So what that means is that the other 2/3 are broken up into really small groups, which means Asian languages have a lot less in common than European languages because they're drawing from many different language families, if that makes sense. I think that makes sense, yeah. So Asia is home to 2,300 plus languages. That's just what we've discovered, I think. And the most spoken of which are obviously ones you've heard of, so Chinese, Hindi, Arabic, Indonesian, Urdu, Bengali, Japanese, Punjabi, Vietnamese, Marathi, Korean, Tagalog. I think I'd heard of all those except for Marathi. I had to look that one up. And Thai, sorry. But I know Thai, I just forgot to read it out in the main thing. But obviously there's plenty more, those are just the most commonly spoken. Yeah, and as I said, whilst Europe is dominated by Indo-European languages, so languages from one language family, Asia's a combination of a bunch of different major and minor families, which we'll get into, but they're including Indo-European languages, so they are actually spoken in Asia as well. Mostly from the, as you can see, it's not just European, it's Indo-European, so that prefix Indo is obviously relating to India, and it diverges into Indo-Iranian and Indo-Aryan languages, so languages like Hindi, Persian, there's plenty of others, Urdu as well, are in that Indo-European group, but they're spoken in Asia. We did talk about them in the European languages one, which is kind of cheating because India is definitely not in Europe, for anyone who's looked at a map, but we'll go over that later. So some of the language families in Asia include Indo-European, Sino-Tibetan, as I spoke before, Afro-Asiatic, Austronesian. Those four I just said are four major language families, so just so you know, there's 6 major language families. So Indo-European is the biggest, and then Sino-Tibetan, Afro-Asiatic, Austronesian, and then there's also one called Niger-Congo, and another one called Trans-New Guinea, I believe. Those are the 6 biggest ones. There's tons more of minor language families, so languages that don't really fit into the major ones. So, interestingly, Japonic is a language family as well, a minor one. It's not actually that similar to, it's not similar enough to Mandarin to be in the Sino-Tibetan family with it. And then you've also got Koreanic, Kradai, Dravidian, Turkic, other minor language families in Asia, and obviously that doesn't encompass 2,300 languages, so there's plenty more, but they're just too small to list all of them, and you probably care a little bit, but not that much to know all about all of them, so I'm just going to give you a basic rundown. Yeah, and this makes Asian languages much more complex to go down, so this will be an interesting video. I think the way it's going to work is I'm not going to really talk about Indo-European languages like Hindi because they've already been discussed in the last video. So if you do want to see that, watch my Europe video after that. You'll understand why I put them in there. But just for the sake of not repeating stuff and boring you, it's going to be in the previous video. But yeah, moving on. So the countries of west of Pakistan, so I'll just go back to that map. Pakistan is about here, next to India. Countries are... Did I say west? What did I say? Well, I meant to say, sorry, countries east of Pakistan. So, Pakistan is here. Everything this way, between Pakistan and Japan, basically, is going to be in this video of the Asian languages. Everything west of Pakistan, so over here, I'm going to do in the Middle East video, even though they're coloured in this map, just because I think it's better to split them up, and it's already kind of a big video as it is. So, yeah, that's basically how it's going to go. Major language families. So, Sino-Tibetan, as I said, is the second biggest language family in the world after Indo-European languages, 400 plus languages and 1.4 billion speakers. That's quite a big difference from the Indo-European one with 3.3 billion speakers, so it's less than half, and I think probably a similar amount of languages, so there's just a lot less people that speak it, but still the second biggest nonetheless, and it's mostly from the Sino, which is the Chinese prefix, mostly from those speakers in Asia. So if you know your languages, you'll know, I think it's slightly over 1 billion people speak Mandarin alone, one language. So almost all of those people who speak that language family speak Mandarin, which is really interesting in how it's spread out. Whereas if you look at the 3.3 billion people who speak Indo-European languages, obviously a billion speaks English, which is a lot, but there's still 2.3 billion left of that, which is then divvied up among the other language speakers. So I think that is a really interesting kind of divvying out of who speaks what, with the vast majority of them speaking Mandarin. But yeah, it's interesting. That does break down into 4 branches, the largest of which is obviously the Chinese branch, and there's 3 other branches which I haven't typed down in here because you probably don't want to know, but if you're interested, you can definitely look up Sino-Tibetan languages, and I'll have a link in the description to a website that breaks down the 6 major language families as well. Mandarin is one of the most important languages, obviously, given how big China is, and you can see how big of a component it is of Sino-Tibetan languages, but it's extremely important. It's obviously the second most spoken language in the world. I think it beat Russia for second most spoken language on the internet after English both times, obviously. And yeah, it's incredibly important to diplomatic language and all these other things. It's actually, I don't believe this is true. Going through Australian airports where I live, actually under the English signs is Mandarin usually, because we have a large influx of, I think, Chinese people. And Austronesian is another major language family, which is a bit all over the place, but it is in Asia as well. So that breaks down into 2 branches, which is Formosan and Malayo-Polynesian, of which Malayo-Polynesian splits into 2 sub-branches. So language branches can do that. They can further divide down before they reach individual languages. So the Malayo-Polynesian one is the interesting one. So it splits into Western, which is languages you've probably heard of, like Indonesian, Malay, Tagalog, and Javanese, which are in Asia. And then you've got the Eastern/Oceanic, which is not really in Asia, but you've probably heard of these countries at least, like Samoan, Fijian, Maori, Hawaiian, Tongan, and Tahitian. They're kind of island countries, kind of between Asia and Australia. So yeah, I think that's interesting. Minor language families. So those were the major ones out of the way. I don't think, obviously, I'm sure someone speaks one of all 6 of them in Asia, but those are the main parts that are represented in Asia. The other ones, the bulk of speakers in Asia speak minority languages, obviously, because there's 3 billion other Asians who aren't accounted for in what was it I said? There's 3 billion other Asians that aren't accounted for in Sino-Tibetan, and not all of them are in Austronesian, obviously. So the rest of them are here, and the other minority languages I haven't talked about. So you've got Japonic, which obviously is Japanese, and the Ryukyuan languages, which are spoken on the Ryukyuan Islands, which I'm not 100% sure geographically. I believe, if you know what Japan looks like, I've got it back on the map over here. The red, you can see here, those kind of islands together, I believe it's somewhere around there. You've got Koreanic and the Jeju languages, which is, I think it's disputed how much of the language a lot of them are if they're dialects. I'm not 100% sure on that one either. I'm actually doing a lot of learning making these videos as well, because this is also stuff that I don't really know about. But yeah, it's spoken on the Korean peninsula, I believe. Kra-Dai, which is Thai and Lao. So if you probably have seen Thai before, you might not have known it was Thai, but it's kind of like a really curly, interesting language. It looks really, really strange, and I've tried learning alphabet before I went there, and I did not allow myself enough time, so I was unsuccessful because it is really hard. But yeah, and Thai is obviously spoken in Thailand. Lao is spoken in Laos. They are, I think, the 2 principal languages of Kra-Dai, and there might be others, I'm not 100% sure. You've got Mongolic, which is, I think, the only major language spoken of that is Mongolian, but there's historical languages that have existed, obviously spoken in Mongolia, and there are plenty of other branches too small to include in this video. Sorry, I can't put them all in. If you showed up for one of them, I'm very apologetic, because I can't put every single one in. The video would be too long. And yeah, languages I said before, like Hindi, Urdu, Bengali, have already been discussed in the Europe video, because they are I think they're Indo-Aryan languages. They're definitely Indo-European languages. So, yeah, you can check out the Europe video if you want to see them. And there will be plenty more languages spoken in the Middle East video, which will be the next one I make. So, countries west of Pakistan, so Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and all around that. Probably Central Asia as well, so the stands will be in the next video, just because it would be too much to talk about in one video, and the last one was even longer, so I'm not going to try and do that again, because people have an attention span. But yeah, that's basically it. So just to close, Asian, I spelled that wrong, sorry. Asia is the home to the most languages out of any continent, and some of the hardest, basically. It's got even more than Africa, and that's despite Africa having a bunch of small communities that speak their own local language. So even Asia still beats them. It's got the most languages, and it's obviously famous for having things like Mandarin, Japanese, Korean, really difficult languages for people to learn. So if you're going to learn an Asian language as an English speaker, you should definitely be prepared to put in a lot of hard work, because it's going to be quite difficult. And just on the right, I've got a flag I found for, someone made it on Reddit, I think, for Sino-Tibetan languages. This is a cool flag, so I just put it in. It's not official at all, but there you go. I just wanted to show you guys. If you are interested in learning a language, you should definitely check out, I'll have the top link in the description for Head of State Language Learning, which is a website that I've been working on. It's completely free to use, there's no sign up, and it's basically got resources for any language you could want to learn. So you can go onto the website, you can find your language. It's especially good for beginners because it has basically the links to the websites with resources in the order that you would want to learn them. So if you click on, say, what's the language? Mandarin. If you're learning Mandarin, you would click on Mandarin and it will have the first things you need, basically explaining like the simple stuff in the language, and it will go all the way through in the order of things you should learn. So like pronouns, verb conjugation, it'll just go through everything, and you can just click them one by one and learn them all, master them all. It'll have links to websites explaining stuff, YouTube videos, people just having a conversation for most languages that you'd probably want to learn. And yeah, as I said, it's completely free. It is still currently under development, so it's not completely operational. I'm working on it as hard as I can. I'm the only person working on it, so it might take a little bit more. But yeah, I'd appreciate it if you could just check it out, have a look at the homepage. I think it looks pretty good. And yeah, it'll be the top link in the description. So thank you for watching. If you could like and subscribe, or even comment what you're interested in doing, because I respond to all my comments at the moment, it would be really helping the channel, so I'd really appreciate that. And then more people can see the videos and I can make them better basically and learn more stuff and teach you guys. And I am planning on, after these kind of languages in different areas videos, I'm planning on doing like a full guide. If that's something you'd be interested in for learning a language, I probably won't do it at a specific language, I'll just do it in general what you should do, and then potentially I could maybe teach Italian or something, an actual language. It just depends. But yeah, if you want me to make a video on something, just tell me, because I'll literally do it. But yeah, thank you for watching and subscribe.